And welcome to the Lacrosse Show. I'm Connor Wilson. With me, as always, Mr. Mark Powers, celebrating a very happy birthday yesterday. How close are you to playing Masters Lacrosse now?
Days go by and I get closer and closer. I just turned 29, so we're getting really close now. I think I'll be trying to play some Masters sooner rather than later.
Well, it's a wonderful world, and I look forward to welcoming you to it. Let's hop right into it. We had Canada tryouts last weekend in Buffalo, New York. I love that Canada is having their tryouts in the United States. That's fantastic. I also love the fact that they went with really laid back, like a dry fit jersey and black shorts. That was pretty cool to see. But what did you think about the actual games? What do you think about the team? How is it shaping up this year?
Well, it's clear that their selection process is evolving to having the scrimmage event at Canisius College, like you said. They're mimicking the states in that regard, and I think that's a good thing. The teams that they played were Robert Morris, Denver, and Canisius. Three teams that have a college, a Canadian bent to them. That often recruit Canadian players. And that was obviously good for their game. As far as the development of the team, with Canada, you always know that they're going to be locked and loaded offensively. For them, I'm always curious about what they're going to do defensively, both with the long poles and in goals. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out and, what if other selection events they have.
Sure. I think that they do have two young goalies. I got to see them play out of the duel in Denver. I thought both were extremely impressive. So I think that they're lucky there. When it comes to polls too, it's like you got Brody Merrill. Everybody knows about him.
Right.
There are some other guys though up in Canada. MJ Keekabelt, for one, is a guy. He's a D3 guy, but
right.
He can play. So I think
he played at RIT.
Yeah, he was another RIT guy. So they've got some real talent. And I think that there's a lot of potential there. They're going to mix some veterans in with some youth, and I think they're going to be as competitive as they've ever been.
It's a question of slowing them down. Rather, they score so many goals. It's just what defense just has to bend, not break.
Yeah, no question. Well, now we're going to kind of stick with the field game, but go inside our computers, inside science. Lacrosse 14, video game. People have been asking for a serious lacrosse video game for ages. As long as I've been a player. So, and video games have existed. What do you think about this? The Kickstarter seems to be off to a rocking start.
Yeah, of course. I'm not a big video game guy myself. I've seen Lacrosse, a video game. I think it's a pretty good game. My understanding is it's not like as developed as one that you'd buy at a store, like a PlayStation or an Xbox game. But I couldn't tell from the production that I saw. The gameplay seemed pretty realistic. The Kickstarter aspect to the funding, I think, is great. Is the lacrosse community willing to directly pay and fund this game? How much are you willing to pay to play a lacrosse video game, and are you willing to make that investment? I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's I think a truly interesting aspect to this is that people have been asking for it, and a group of people have tried to go the traditional routes of having a game produced through EA Sports or whatever it is, and that hasn't worked out. So they're trying to crowdfund, and they're trying to use the community, which has been asking for it. It's an interesting concept. Do you think they're going to reach their goal?
I hope so, and I think that's the risk reward with the Kickstarter type of programs is that is the community that you're specifically trying to market to, or are they going to show out? Is the lacrosse community going to show up and support the video game? I sincerely hope they will, and I'm sure you'll get people that are going to support even if they don't necessarily have as much of an interest in the game itself.
Yeah, so far, from what I can tell, they've been meeting their daily goals. So I think that that's a good sign. It's a question, were people really excited early on? Is it going to die off? It's going to be interesting to track this one. I'm also hopeful that they pulled off just because I think it can help expose lacrosse to more people.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge video game guy myself, but that's because I'm old.
For sure.
I like that you agreed that I'm old. That's quality.
No, I'm sorry. But I think that the video game, like you said, is great in that regard. And as you guys always preach, grow the game, right? Like, who knows how people are going to find out about lacrosse. If it's a video game that they get as an app or something, even better,
Yeah, there you go. Now moving back to the international scene, but we're heading indoors this time, all right? We had the Bowhunter Cup. Not a lot of press or prep for this. I actually struggled to even get rosters for both teams before the game. I got them the day of. it was tough to get them from both teams.
I can
So
imagine.
yeah, it was a tough pull. So there wasn't a ton of promotion. It wasn't aired live. You see a little bit here and there. I mean, the Iroquois dominated. They brought a really solid team with, a bunch of guys who have even been playing together over the summer for Six Nations, and they played against a really U.S. developmental team. I mean, were you shocked by? I think it was a 24-10 score. Was that a surprise for you?
No, the score obviously wasn't a surprise. You addressed it. It was a developmental team. Most of the very top U.S. professional box players also happened to be the U.S.'s best field players who were engaged in Team USA tryouts right now, which I suspect is why they weren't available and you didn't see their presence. But as far as development, I think it's awesome. You don't get a better opportunity than playing a team of all of the professional Iroquois players. What better way to learn about box lacrosse, and hopefully that pays dividends for the states down the road.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I thought that four players might really kind of have international coming out parties in this game. Greg Rogowski, Ethan Farrell, who is an NLL player, to give him
Right.
his full due credit, and he's a very good player as well. A Lynchburg guy, another D3 guy. We're popping him up all over the place. Rogowski was a D2 guy. Another guy not that many people know about. Brandon Doobie played, I think, in Endicott, another D3 guy. But these guys all had, 3 or 4 points on the day and really did produce some offense. So I'm hoping that guys like that are, maybe we're able to use this game to get a shot, for the next U.S. Wilk team, or maybe even in the NLL. It would be neat to see.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The last guy that really showed out was Matt Hickman, who's another D3 guy. But it shows you that the Americans that are adopting the game are, guys that are just serious about lacrosse, and it's become a passion. One thing that I think is interesting, and it kind of speaks to the charm of this game, but also kind of speaks to some of the uncertainty, is what you were talking about, the fact that we didn't have rosters before the game and that it was a developmental team, whereas in years past, this has started to be more of a promoted event, a bigger thing between the U.S. and the Iroquois, and I wish it would have maintained some of that luster and maybe progressed in that regard a little bit more. I think we just kind of
like... I mean, it's a tough year, I think, for that, just with the World Game build-up. So,
of course, yeah. Hopefully it returns.
Yeah, I think it probably will. Another topic we got to hit up, I mean, a couple new programs making their debuts this fall. I'm particularly interested by Boston University, no football team. They've got a decent-sized stadium, good support for their hockey program. You got a team like Providence is starting to fully fund their team with scholarships. That's kind of a regional, local rival. I think the New England scene is kind of picking up. I don't know how good or competitive BU is going to be right away, but for me, they're really a team to kind of keep an eye on, and they're kind of one of those bigger athletic schools. What's the team that you think kind of stands out this fall that you're really pumped to see kind of go the next step?
Well, I'm interested in all of them, actually. I thought about going to Richmond before I went to BC, and part of the reason I didn't go was because they had club lacrosse, and I was thinking about doing bigger things, so it's great to see them get a varsity program. I know how good that school is down there, so Richmond's a team I'm following, and they had a good result in the play for Parkinson's, for a first-year outfit to go toe-to-toe with Towson. Again, results don't necessarily matter, but from what I was reading, it sounded like they showed out pretty well. Their defense seems to be good. Got a lot of faith in Dan Chamati as a coach. But really the story that I'm interested to see more about and that I've liked following has been Richie Mead down at Furman. Furman is one of these smaller private schools that are adopting the game, like High Point and Mercer. And they're obviously doing it to gain more notoriety, and I think that Richie Mead is a perfect coach for them. He's going to run a disciplined team. All the media I've seen about their preseason has been showing basically him adopting all the Navy programs, and it's great to see where they're going to go. I think that's a good match.
Yeah, and you look at a school like Furman, and we may not know it in the lacrosse community, but it's not like they're an unknown commodity in the sporting world. They've got a pretty competitive soccer team, I believe. So, I think that it's a school that supports their athletics. So I'm really interested to see if that small school can take it to the next level and really be competitive in D1 lacrosse, like Loyola did. We're going to switch it up a little bit now and talk about Sankofa lacrosse. We're going to bring Chazz on, okay? This has been a project in the making, we've heard, for quite a while, but we're going to get our first public appearance on October 25th with a scrimmage against Brown and the English national team at Brown. Very excited for that. Chazz, thank you for coming on. Welcome. How are you, sir? possibly still on mute.
I thought I was off. I thought I hit it.
Hey, technology, it confuses us all.
Yeah. Nah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Sankofa Lacrosse? I don't know that every viewer has necessarily read our interview or the press release that was out on LPG, but there's some information out there. But why don't you tell us kind of what the idea is behind the foundation, what your mission statement is, and what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, it's there's a lot that really goes into it. We're still kind of developing it as we go. I'll give you the background story in a little bit, but essentially we wanted to create an organization that really works toward diversifying the game, starting primarily with the Black lacrosse community, and introduces a larger dimension of networking, both professionally and personally, connecting and reconnecting lacrosse communities generationally and geographically. And then just opening the door for more youth, more people of color in the game to get opportunities through this sport.
I mean, that's clearly there's some impact, I think, probably in your life. I mean, your father played the sport, still coaches. I've coached with him here in Brooklyn. He's a great guy. I mean, did that influence you in any way? How your father kind of brought the game into your life?
In terms of the project or in general?
Both, either.
Well, certainly in terms of the game in general. I mean, I was introduced to it from him, and he was coaching the game as far back as I can remember, and really even when I was born out in California, and he was playing club ball out there. So, I've been around it literally since I graduated, since I was born, and that's a credit to him. He got me started, taught me all the things I needed to know to get going in the game. Unfortunately put me in situations as I was coming up to benefit from some really awesome coaches and people in the game, not just the coaches I played for, but, the people that I met within the game.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Chazz, for those people out there that don't necessarily know exactly what Sankofa means, how did you guys come up with the name Sankofa?
Well, interestingly enough, we're headed back to Brown next week to play, and
right.
I first learned of the Sankofa concept at Brown. It was actually part of our church service, the church that I attended on campus, and it means essentially it's not taboo to go back and reclaim what you forgot. And so the idea when we first started this again, or started coming up with the concepts and the ideas, was to create an opportunity to go back and reconnect with all of the Black players that played before us. I think there's this generational gap that we kind of forget about. We hear about Jim Brown and we hear about the Tin Bears at Morgan State, and then other than that, it kind of goes to Kyle Harrison and me, sort of, because I've had the opportunity to play in the MLL, but even in college, it was John Christmas and Kyle Harrison. And my name wasn't really that big during my college years, so you jump forward to really the Brattons are next. And even with them, they graduated in 2011, or so 11, 10, 9, 8. That's 3 years in between us. So them and Jovi, and there are a few names you hear now and then that are still playing, Josh Hawkins or Gordon Murray, but there's other guys that have played, that played before us, and that are guys that are playing now. So
why don't you actually talk about some of the guys that are playing now? Because I've seen your roster, and it looks like you've got some guys people know about, and then some guys that people might not know about. How'd you go about putting this team together?
We put the team together. There were a few different dimensions to it. One, we wanted to make sure there were certain people involved. Like I mentioned to you in conversation a couple of times that, a guy like Billy Day, who's been involved in the game for so long, was a great player at Carolina, a great player. He played in the MLL, was an all-MLL player, and then had the opportunity to coach with the Cannons and was Coach of the Year and won a World Championship with them. So he's a guy that maybe he's not playing now or playing professionally now or whatever, but he's a guy that should be on this roster just because of, if nothing else, the concept and the idea of trying to reach back and to connect people. He's a guy that everybody should know about, whether it's the Black lacrosse community or the rest of the lacrosse community. So that he was somebody that we had to get involved. Damian Davis, same type of deal. He's not playing right now, but he played for 4 or 5 years in the MLL. Was a standout at Princeton. He needs to be involved. Whether we had other guys or not, he needed to be on that roster. There were some other guys that were younger that you haven't heard of that we wanted to bring into the folds as well. Guys that were all of them were good players in college, but some of them are still doing stuff in lacrosse right now. You've got some of the LXM guys, for example, that you may or may not have heard of if you haven't been to the LXM events. Andrew Casimir, Max Davis, some of those guys. Milton Lyles is a guy, actually he's sitting right here trying to be quiet, but he played at Carolina and, due to some injuries, wasn't able to have the career that he wanted to have, but he's still a very, very good player and a great athlete.
We see you, Milton.
Yeah. And, so you got him, and he's another guy that's very active in growing the game and developing the game. In fact, that's why he's here now. For the last 2 weeks, we've been grassrooting it, just showing up at youth football practices and trying to snag kids and coaches and talk to them.
Yes.
And he's been doing a great job of doing that type of thing down here for the last year. So we wanted to have those type of guys involved. So it's a mix, and then obviously we're going up there to win. We want to compete at as high a level as we can. So we wanted to make sure the guys that we're playing are, guys that can really play. Evan Redwood's another one you haven't heard of, but he was a standout attackman at Amherst. So
D3, I love the D3.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
Got to show him some love.
Plus, you got a Weston High School graduate, Marcus Craigwell.
Got Marcus Craigwell, who I went to college with his sister, so I've known him since he was coming up. And it was just pretty cool to be able to involve him in this, because I know it's something that he's always been passionate about too.
Yeah, I coached him for half a season of JV lacrosse back in the day, believe it or not.
He was a beast, wasn't he?
No question. And his brother is an incredible rugby player.
Exactly.
Yeah, watch out for Miles, rugby sevens.
Exactly. Football turned rugby. I wish we could get him on the lacrosse field.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an interesting question, actually, to lead in. What's the reception been like at these football practices?
Interestingly enough, it's been very good. We decided to take the approach, and we thought about doing it last year, and really just didn't have the time to really do it the way we wanted to. And this year we just decided, forget it. We're just going to show up. We're going to do it. We're not going to really have too much of a plan involved in it. We're just going to go out there and see what happens. And all of a sudden we got kids coming up to us. What's that? Can I play? And we had a bunch of sticks out with us in a goal, breakaway goal. So they jumped on it. And then, as they're coming over, walking past, whatever, as coaches were leaving practice, and we snagged the coaches. Hey, have you heard of the game? What are your kids doing after football's over? And, we've been very, I'm not sure exactly what the word is, but we've made it very clear that we're not trying to steal their kids. We want to give them something to do after the season's over. And it's been pretty good. Just today we ended up getting in touch with the commissioner of one of the whole programs, who was also very close with the commissioner of the whole, was it South Florida, I think? Pop Warner? Yeah, South Florida, Pop Warner. Group, and so we've got a meeting with him tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So it's been good, and we're just gonna keep it moving.
That's fantastic, man. Wow, sounds like you guys are really getting out there. Is this a newer thing for you? Is this just born by just like the opportunity that you find around you, or had you found success with this approach other places? I mean, it sounds really interesting.
No, well, there's a lot down here that kind of hinders the growth of lacrosse, but especially when it comes to reaching out to communities that have never been involved in it. Last year we actually got involved with a smaller football program, Jesus Team Sports, and we've been working with them for a year. I don't know if you guys saw it. We posted a video on Facebook and Twitter last week, I think it was, where we're really taking sticks into these communities. This is a community where 2 blocks away from where we were, and 2 hours after we left, somebody was shot and killed that same night. So part of it is we've been trying to get into those communities and see what we can do with lacrosse, just to give some other opportunities and to introduce something new, expand their horizons. but you're really dealing with football here. You know, if down here in Miami and in South Florida, you've got to kind of, I don't want to say battle, but the football coaches are with
You got to kiss the ring. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, you really do. You know, they're with them all year. So we've kind of had to, it's something that we've thought about and tried to work through. And then at the end of the day, we just decided, hey, let's just go out there and see what happens. So here we are.
That's awesome. That's the attitude right there. People should definitely head over to Facebook as well and check out Sankofa Lacrosse. Just want to get a little plug out there. You guys are doing good stuff. So that's Sankofa. Search that on Facebook. Get in touch with Chazz and the boys. Keep up to date on what they got. Mark, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, sir.
No, that's all right. I mean, speaking of Sankofa, I wanted to get back to that for a second. I mean, Chazz,
Yep.
and Milton too, since you're there. I mean, how excited are you guys just to get out there and play? I mean, I happen to have had the pleasure of playing with many black players or African American players over the years, and even the guys that aren't involved in the game are so excited, and it's just been something that everybody's just like talked about hypothetically. I mean, talk about what that means to actually be part of this.
Well, I think that's kind of the interesting point here. You know, one of the questions we continue to get is, we're putting this black team together, and what's diverse about it? You know, and
Right.
The thing is, the idea of putting this team together wasn't necessarily to create diversity. This was something that, realistically, if you look at the sport right now, it's not all that diverse anyway.
Right.
But we can look at this team and say, 10 years ago we couldn't have done this. 15 years ago we couldn't have done this. So it's an opportunity to show, not necessarily that the sport is super, super diverse, but to show that it has progressed and show where it's come. And so for us, I mean, I'll only speak for myself right now, despite all the, positive feedback I've gotten from so many people. The fact that I can step on a field with 25 other black players for the first time ever, that means a lot to me. To play with some of these guys, like I've been fortunate to play with Kyle, I've been fortunate to play with John Christmas. When I came out of college, that was one of my goals, to play with both of those guys, because that opportunity doesn't come around a lot.
You and a lot of other kids.
Yeah, seriously, and so to be able to do that is awesome, and to hear some of these guys that like Jovi is a guy that I've been kind of talking to and working with since he was in college, and
we can call it mentoring.
What's up? Yeah, a little bit of mentoring. But for him to say, man, I wish I could get on the field with you. I mean, I remember when we had those conversations, and now it's coming to fruition. Getting to play, the opportunity to play with my brother, who's 5-6 years behind me, who I never got to play with ever. So that's cool. That type of thing is what makes this experience unique and really cool for us.
And I mean, just to also speak to kind of how rare and new this concept still is, no matter how much people have talked about it hypothetically. I mean, have you ever been on a lacrosse team where a quarter or more of the players were black or African American? Or
no. The most black players that have ever been on one team with me, I think, was 3.
3.
Probably 3.
Out of
whatever a whole team is. And I mean, in college, the most I ever played with was one other, and he was a walk-on. That just he came in, and I mean, not to take anything from him, but he wasn't recruited to play there. He got into the school and decided he wanted to give it a go, and made the team. Busted his tail and made the team. But aside from him, I didn't play with anybody else. Actually, one other guy, but he didn't make it through freshman year.
So it is that rare.
Yeah, it really is. So yeah, it's something that's really, it's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. And it's something that when you think of providing opportunities, there's nobody else that has done something, or no group. There's been a successful effort that I know of to really involve a lot of black people in the game, and that's kind of where we see this team going. It's not so much that this is a diverse team, but having this team is something that we can use to involve more people.
Sounds good to me. I'm in. I'm in so much that I'm going to be there in person. I'm excited to check it out, actually. I'm really thrilled. I think the entire event is cool. And the fact that you're playing Brown and the English national team, I think we're going to see 3 really different styles of lacrosse, kind of a men's club team, a college team, an international team. I think that that's really going to be an exciting thing. So if you're in the area on Friday, October 25th, make sure you head over to Brown in the early afternoon and check out these scrimmages. It's going to be killer. I'd like to thank Chazz for coming on tonight, talking to us, educating us a little bit about what he's doing. Make sure you check him out on Facebook, follow them, keep up to date. It's going to be a really cool ride. So, and hopefully a lot of good is going to come out of it. So, Chazz, thank you very much. Yeah, it was awesome. Well, Mark, thanks as always. Have a good week. Happy birthday yesterday. You're an old man, almost. Chazz, you don't look a day over 20.
Is that good or bad?
That's a good thing, my friend. That's a good thing. You don't want to look old. I'm getting gray. It's dangerous.
I had one gray. I pulled it out, though.
Fair enough. Can't hate on that. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next week. We got another great show lined up for you. Till then, hit the wall.
Later.